Welcome to the Peer Insight Framestorming webinar. In this 15-minute session, you'll learn how to frame your new business concept so that, rather than proving it, you can improve it quickly and affordably. We found that good problem framing is the secret to good problem solving. Also in this session, you'll learn the secrets that startups and venture capitalists know, and we'll show you how to apply those secrets to larger enterprises.
I'm Tim Ogilvy, founder of Peer Insight. I'm joined by my colleague, Casey Mitchell. You might know Peer Insight as the co-authors of Designing for Growth and the Designing for Growth field book. These are the best-selling books in the field of design thinking. We spend most of our time, though, not writing books, but instead guiding large organizations through the process of developing and testing and commercializing their breakthrough concepts. The methods we used are a combination of design thinking plus business strategy and, most importantly, entrepreneurship. We've applied the framestorming methods you'll see today for industrial firms like Goodyear and Intel, for big consumer brands like Nike and Marriott.
And so in order to make it real, today's discussion is based on a real client project, adapted for teaching purposes. Again, I'm Casey Mitchell, and today I'll play the role of the client project manager. You'll hear what my plans were and how framestorming changed my approach and the outcome.
So framestorming obviously uses the metaphor of a frame. And in the framestorming process, we'll use different frames to look at your concept and to see what's present that makes it good, what's missing, right? What's really uncertain, and especially what would have to be true if this is a good opportunity for us. We use multiple frames because each frame highlights a different aspect of the opportunity. The good news, people are natural creative problem solvers. The bad news is we're impatient. As soon as we see a new possibility, we just want to build it, right? And our approach would say, slow down. In my 20 plus years of entrepreneurship, I've learned that problem solving is always easier when it's preceded by problem framing. And problem framing says, am I seeing this problem clearly? Is it obvious what to do first? If you skimp on problem framing, you'll probably end up building a house of cards that will come tumbling down, and often with costly results.
So for the purposes of this webinar, let's say that I work for Pfizer, and I'm the product manager for NicoQuit, a new product. And NicoQuit is a nicotine replacement therapy that's FDA approved. It's in a patch or a gum form. It's sold through over-the-counter pharmacies, and it has middling results. And so to fix this problem, our innovation team came up with a new concept, VPAC, Virtual Private Addiction Clinic. Our concept focuses on the younger smoker, aged 25 to 35, who lives on the internet. The solution is based on the success of expensive residential addiction treatment centers, and it combines MyQuitDoc, which is a dedicated clinician available by phone, MyQuit app, which is a quit plan through a chatbot, Quit a non-cohort, so folks meeting together with allies, messaging daily, meeting weekly, and the NicoQuit 90-day subscription. And so I had planned to do a 6-month proof of concept with VPAC for 35 smokers. It will involve multiple cohorts, and it will cost about $1.2 million. But that investment was easily justified for a $1 billion market opportunity.
So Casey, I love it, but again, slow down. Like VPAC is cool, and it is a startup venture. There's a lot of untested assumptions in the concept you described. And that's a lot of guesses to base a $1.2 million bet on. I would say if we apply a framestorming process, and what if we could see that there's an easier way to validate the concept? If I do a one-day framestorming with you, we can find a way to see VPAC in a new light that doesn't cost as much to get validation. Sound all right?
It's worth a try.
All right, so to conduct framestorming, we select the best frames from a group that we use often, you'll see on this page, and we would pre-populate them before the meeting based on what you know so far about VPAC. So we probably work with you, Casey, to pick your brain. This graphic shows 10 different frames or lenses that we might choose from depending upon the concept, right? From a journey map to a concept visualization, usually includes a value prop and sometimes even a go-to-market plan. The idea is that we want to select the 5 or 6 best frames because they're all different, pre-populate them with good enough content, doesn't have to be exactly right, because we're going to bring together 5 to 7 of your key stakeholders for a one-day deep dive, right? And they'll engage with the frames and the content, they'll refine them, we'll distill their feedback into the next to the bottom box here, the make or break assumptions, like what would have to be true for VPAC to be a good concept. And then it's really easy once we have that to design a learning plan that we can conduct in the market to validate it. Again, we probably spend 4 hours on the frames, an hour looking at the make or break assumptions, and an hour designing a learning plan together. So a pretty tidy day without having to build the entire concept first. Typically, it looks like this, Casey. We'd populate a room. We don't need a PowerPoint and a projector. We need walls and maybe some flip charts, right? In practice, these action photos give you a better sense of what the energy in the room is like. People are going to be up, making changes to the content, authoring new content. Great thing is nobody ever complains about these meetings, and nobody in the meeting has the last word, right? We're not going to resolve differences of opinion here. We're going to note them as points that we need to clarify through our in-market validation test. For example, one of the frames we commonly use is called the jobs to be done frame. And this frame asks, in your case, what would be the jobs that a 25 to 35-year-old smoker would be willing to hire VPAC to do, right? The idea is they don't want VPAC, they want VPAC to do a job for them, right? And so in the lower left, we'd say there's some functional jobs. And in this frame, we'd say, help me blank so that I can blank. And those might be met or undermet or ideally unmet, right? There's some emotional jobs in the middle that are getting closer to the sweet spot, things that people don't exactly know how to ask for that are less quantifiable but very important. And then in the upper right, there are latent or emerging emotional jobs to be done. And the sweet spot for the jobs to be done is to look at the different jobs that your concept can do and identify which of those are met or undermet or unmet, and see if your concept looks strong in terms of doing some really valuable unmet jobs to be done.
Great, that makes sense. Let me see if I can apply it to VPAC. So if I'm remembering correctly, our research tells us the target customer will hire VPAC to, and I'll start in that bottom left corner, minimize my nicotine cravings so I can get through them without a cigarette.
So that's basically what NicoQuit does today.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Okay.
So moving up, help me have access to a live clinical expert so I can get treatment to overcome my addiction. And, the really unmet emotional need that we found was combine a support group and anonymity so I can have support but avoid feelings of shame.
And so those two in the upper right are basically what you derive from the idea of an addiction clinic.
Mm-hmm, that's right. And these priorities are exactly what I want to prove by standing up a 6-month 35 smoker proof of concept.
I love it, and I still think it would be more prudent if we can test the component parts first. I think it can be cheaper and faster than an end-to-end test, and I'll show you how. Okay, one of the ways we figure out how is called a learning plan. And a learning plan has time running along the x-axis, and it starts in the upper left with, in the first 30 days, you're going to do thought experiments. How big is this market? How much would it cost to produce the VPAC concept, right? These are little component tests that you think about and don't have to leave the building to address, right? In the bottom, you're going to do live in-market experiments with real users, right? And those are end-to-end tests. And what I want to direct your attention to is the middle, right? There's a middle layer called 2D and 3D in-market experiments. And we can do those also as components, but in the market with real users, and they're pretty fast and pretty cheap. All right, so when we apply this frame to your concept, you'll see you've already done the green post-its in the upper row, right? The target users and the market size and growth rates, and you know what your IP applies to. And you're planning that 6-month trial in red at the bottom. And what I'd like to suggest is, I bet in that middle layer we could do some landing page tests, right? Put up some landing pages for the VPAC offering and see what people click on and maybe pre-register for to be a beta user, right? And also lemonade stands are another nice 2D experiment, meaning you can set up a booth at a end cap at a retail pharmacy, or you can go to a health coaches conference, right, and get a booth there and interact with coaches and or smokers. You can do it in a mall, right? These are things you can stand up in a day or two, present the concept as if it's real, and see how people respond to the component elements. Again, these can be done much more quickly, and these are the types of post-framestorming activities that we usually see. They take place in weeks and not months.
Great, so let's say I took your advice, and we have these results, and here's a few quotes that we heard from that research. And honestly, these insights are not exactly what we expected. And I want to highlight the middle quote in particular, which says medical help is a turnoff. I would not ever check myself into a clinic, but having a human coach would be appealing.
All right. Maybe you can recast those results as to how they affected your views on the jobs to be done, Casey.
Sure. So here's how it changed. We had several of our jobs move from and then to, and what's exciting is we did confirm, the first one there, that, they want to minimize their cravings and get through without a cigarette. So that's exciting news for us. But the one I really want to highlight, these small tests uncovered some big potential failure modes. The highest priority one that changed and pivoted our potential concept was around, rather than a live clinical expert, it was about having access to a trusted coach, because I want a new lifestyle choice and to stick with it. So honestly, I'm just really glad that we didn't take 6 months and $1.2 million to learn this.
As you can see from this slide, if I go back to the frames, you laid out some jobs to be done. We expressed them as make or break assumptions, right? That a private quit doc was necessary, that support and anonymity would be valued the way it is in an addiction clinic, and that NICOQUIT would be an important part of the bundle, right? And you validated the last one, but we pivoted on the first two just through the 3D tests, right? That's really how the logic of a Framestorming workshop should help us get to those kinds of very specific actions. So how would you summarize what you got out of Framestorming, Casey?
It completely changed our approach. We went into this thinking way too big. There was a lot of risk bundled up in those 6 months, and what you brought to light for us is that if we break it down into its components, we can systematically try to eliminate that risk in a smaller, cheaper, faster way.
Love it. And specifically in about a third as much time, it looks like, and for about a fifth as much of the planned cost.
Yep, we acted like a startup instead of like big pharma.
Very good. All right, on the actual project, we use more frames, obviously, than just the jobs to be done. So this image here highlights 6 frames that we use. We use jobs to be done there because it's super helpful. We use some analogies to other services, a demand chain, control points, et cetera. We got down to the make or break assumptions. And one of the really interesting things is we looked at the demand chain discrete choices, right? How will this thing get sold through what channel and at what acquisition cost and in what price bundles? And the default approach from the client was that they would sell where they always sold, which is retail pharma, right? Which is great. But our Framestorming said, well, there are 2 very different channel possibilities, right? One would be to go to employers who bear healthcare costs for their workers and have employer subsidized and employer sponsored programs. That channel would probably require a professional sales force. All right, but another one that was super interesting is called direct to consumer, right? E-commerce sales direct to consumer, and that's a very efficient channel. We actually did a test where we ran all 3 of those channels in parallel, and in the 60-day test, 80% of the conversions, almost 80% of the conversions came direct to consumer, which is fantastic for our client because that is by far the lowest cost of customer acquisition. In effect, they disintermediate the channel in both cases and have a much more efficient sales cost. All right, so the benefits you get from a one-day Framestorming workshop, pretty straightforward. See the strengths and weaknesses of your concept really quickly, flesh out the business case, focus on the critical few assumptions, and turn that into an affordable in-market validation plan. What we find is that if you frame the problem well, you're ready to learn through action in the market and not debate in the conference room. And finally, I'd just say stay in touch. I'd love to talk to you about your concept, and I'll offer to the people that have gotten this far with us that give us a call, and in a 20-minute phone call or Zoom meeting, we'll hear from you. What's the concept? We'll tell you what frames we suggest, what probably are the top make or break assumptions based on what you've described, and some ideas and strategies for how you might test those affordably. No catch, reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you and provide some actionable guidance based on one phone call. All right, thanks for listening, and happy framing.